So when we take this information, right, I think we use this to illustrate like the context of what policing is going to kind of be like in black and brown communities, right? So even though police are ostensibly about, protecting and serving, right, they become very much a fear-based kind of thing, right? And it's also, particularly amplified, right, by a few things, right, that are going on, right? So one is that if you think about the neighborhood, which we've already discussed, the area that you live in, right? That's going to be a factor that affects all interactions, right? So if it feels dangerous, it feels, scary, if it feels not, right? We also know that personal and vicarious experiences of civilians. So if something's happened to me, or if I know someone, something has happened, right? It's going to shape the way that I view that police officer, how I react to them, right? I'm going to have like this spike in fear. We also know that there are media stories that often, highlight police misconduct or abuse or use of force, right? And this is particularly amplified, for black and brown people in this country, right? So what ends up happening, right, is that you have like this interesting dynamic where you end up finding that, black and Hispanic Latino people do not trust police or are less likely to. They're less likely to. There was actually an interesting paper that came out, um, a while ago that suggested, um, black people were, so fearful of police, right? They would rather be attacked violently by a stranger than by a police officer, which is kind of interesting, right? It's sort of like a would you rather kind of situation. So it's interesting. But the fear of police is so much more that they fear someone in the uniform who is, supposed to be protecting and serving more than they would a random person coming, interesting, right? I want you to like think about that, just for your own, perspective, right? Like, is that how you see police? And if it is, why? And if not, why not? But you have this situation, right, where, it's starting to, a lot of evidence is being documented, right, that if you have these negative contacts with police, you end up having all kinds of like depression, anxiety, you have sleep disturbances, and you also go out of your way to avoid police. And what I mean by that is like, for me as a white dude, if I'm walking around and I see a police officer, I'm going to see him. I'm not going to do anything really. I'm just like, if I'm on the highway, I'm annoyed because I'm like, I don't want to get pulled over. But if I see, but I don't really go out of my way. I'm not dodging, that police officer. But if black and Hispanic people are more likely to have police avoidant behaviors where they change their walking routes or change like how they interact with them or try to avoid them as much as possible, right? So you have like this threat avoidance going on where people are afraid to contact police, if they have like a problem or for anything, right? They're actively disengaging and trying to find ways to get around like this possible threat. And I say that because it's really important to understand like modern policing, right? Because when you hear what's going on, you know as a police officer, you're likely to go into those kinds of communities. You have to understand like a lot of the context and mindset of what's happening. So what this series of videos is intended to do is to help illustrate that kind of problem, and why it makes it so difficult for policing in black and brown communities.